In 1997, Dr. Sarah Martinez was looking at pictures from space when she saw something that made her heart stop. Deep in the mountains of Washington, a satellite had captured two people in wedding clothes standing by a waterfall. But these weren't just any people. They were Marcus and Rosalie Webb, the newlyweds who had vanished without a trace 12 years earlier on their honeymoon. The strangest part, they looked exactly the same as the day they disappeared. No older, no different, as if time had completely stopped. For 12 long years, everyone thought they were dead. The police had given up. Their families had tried to move on. But now, impossible satellite images showed them still wandering in the same remote wilderness where they had vanished. How could two people survive for 12 years in the mountains without aging a single day? And what kind of love could be so powerful that it breaks the very laws of time itself? Dr. Sarah Martinez stared at her computer screen in disbelief. The satellite image showed something impossible. Two tiny figures stood near a waterfall deep in the Cascade Mountains. One wore white, the other dark clothing. They looked like people in wedding clothes. But that wasn't the shocking part. The shocking part was that these same two figures had appeared in satellite photos for the past 3 days. In the exact same spot. In the exact same positions. As if time had stopped. Sarah rubbed her tired eyes and looked at the date stamp July 8, 1997. 12 years had passed since anyone had seen Marcus and Rosalie Webb alive. She picked up her phone to call the sheriff in Millbrook. Someone needed to know that the missing newlyweds might still be out there. But first, she had to understand how their story began. June 5th, the morning sun painted the small town of Millbrook in golden light. Birds sang in the oak trees that lined Main Street. It was the perfect day for a wedding. Rosalie Chen stood in front of the mirror in the church's tiny back room. Her wedding dress had belonged to her grandmother, brought all the way from China 50 years ago. The silk was still beautiful, still strong. Around her neck hung her grandmother's pearl necklace, each pearl smooth and perfect. "You look like a princess," said her younger sister Lily. At 19, Lily was the maid of honor. She had helped Rosalie get ready since dawn. "I feel like one," Rosalie laughed, spinning in her dress. "Can you believe this is really happening?" Lily smiled, but something worried her. "Are you sure about this, Rose? You and Marcus have only known each other for 8 months. Rosalie stopped spinning and took her sister's hands. "When you know, you know. Marcus is the kindest man I've ever met. He brings me wildflowers every Friday. He reads me poetry. He makes me laugh until my sides hurt. But he's so quiet," Lily said. "Sometimes I wonder what he's really thinking." "That's what makes him special," Rosalie said. "He thinks before he speaks. He cares about every word. When Marcus tells me he loves me, I know he means it with his whole heart." Through the small window they could see guests arriving at the white wooden church. The whole town seemed to be coming. Millbrook only had 1,200 people, and everyone knew everyone else. Rosalie peeked out and saw Marcus's truck pull up. Her heart skipped. Even from far away, she could see him checking his grandfather's gold pocket watch. He always did that when he was nervous. "He's here," she whispered. "Are you nervous?" Lily asked. "No," Rosalie said. And she meant it. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." Across town, Marcus Webb stood in his small apartment, trying to tie his bow tie for the 5th time. His hands shook slightly. Not from fear, but from excitement. At 26, Marcus was known as the quiet forest ranger who lived alone in the house his parents left him. He spent his days protecting the wilderness and his evenings reading books about faraway places. Most people thought he was shy, but really he was just careful with his words. Until he met Rosalie. She was the new kindergarten teacher, fresh from college with big dreams and a bigger smile. The first time he saw her, she was chasing escaped hamsters around her classroom, while 5-year-olds giggled and tried to help. Marcus had come to fix a broken window. He ended up helping catch hamsters instead. "Thank you," she had said, holding a tiny hamster in her hands. "I'm Roly Chen. I'm still learning how to teach." "Marcus Webb," he had replied. "I'm still learning how to talk to pretty teachers." She had laughed at that, a sound like wind chimes in a summer breeze. That's when Marcus knew his careful, quiet life was about to change forever. Now, 6 months later, he was about to marry her. His best man, Sheriff Tom Brennan, knocked on the door. "You ready, son?" Marcus had known Tom since he was a boy. Tom had been his father's best friend before the war took his father away. Tom was like a second father to Marcus now. "I've been ready my whole life," Marcus said. Tom looked at the pocket watch in Marcus's hand. "Your grandfather would be proud. Your father too." Marcus nodded, his throat tight with emotion. His parents were gone, but their love lived on in the watch and in the ring he would give Rosalie today. "I have a surprise for her," Marcus said. "For our honeymoon." "Oh?" Tom raised an eyebrow. "Everyone expects us to go to Niagara Falls, but I found something better. A secret waterfall up in the mountains. A place so beautiful, so private. It'll be like we're the only 2 people in the world." Tom frowned slightly. "Those mountains can be dangerous, Marcus. Maybe stick to the original plan." "Don't worry," Marcus said, patting his ranger jacket. "I know those mountains better than anyone. I want to give Rosalie something no one else has ever had. Our own private paradise." The church bells rang at 2 o'clock sharp. Rosalie walked down the aisle on her father's arm, past the smiling faces of everyone she had ever known. Her mother dabbed her eyes with a tissue. Her kindergarten students waved from the 3rd row. But Rosalie only saw Marcus. He stood at the altar in his best suit, his pocket watch chain gleaming against his vest. When their eyes met, he smiled the smile she had fallen in love with, quiet, gentle, and full of promises. "Dearly beloved," began Reverend Williams, "we are gathered here today to join Marcus and Rosalie in marriage." The ceremony was simple and beautiful. They had written their own vows. "Rosalie," Marcus said, his voice steady despite his racing heart, "you brought sunshine into my quiet world. You taught me that love isn't just something you feel, it's something you do every day. I promise to do love with you for the rest of my life." Rosalie's voice was clear and strong. "Marcus, you showed me that the best adventures aren't in books or faraway places. They're in building a life with someone who truly sees you. I promise to see you, to choose you, and to adventure with you always." When they kissed, the whole church erupted in cheers and applause. The reception was held at the community center, decorated with wildflowers Marcus had picked that morning. Mrs. Patterson from the diner had made a 3-layer cake. The high school band played dancing music. Rosalie couldn't stop smiling. She danced with her father, her new husband, and even little Tommy Chen, her 5-year-old cousin who stepped on her dress twice. "This is the happiest day of my life," she told Lily during a quiet moment. "Mine too," Lily said, squeezing her sister's hand. "I can see how much Marcus loves you, the way he looks at you like you're the most precious thing in the world." As the sun began to set, Marcus found Rosalie by the punch bowl. "Ready for our surprise?" he whispered. "What surprise?" she asked, but she was already grinning. "Trust me," he said, taking her hand. They said their goodbyes quickly. Rosalie threw her bouquet from the back of Marcus's old blue pickup truck. Lily caught it and blushed bright red. "Where are we going?" Rosalie asked as they drove away from the cheering crowd. "Somewhere no one has ever honeymooned before," Marcus said, his eyes bright with excitement. "Somewhere that will be just ours." Rosalie settled back in the passenger seat, still wearing her grandmother's pearls and her wedding dress. Through the truck's rear window, she could see the church where they had just promised their lives to each other. She had no way of knowing it would be the last time she would see Millbrook for 12 long years. But in that moment, driving into the sunset with the man she loved, Rosalie Chen Webb felt like the luckiest woman alive. The future stretched ahead of them, full of endless possibilities and perfect days. How could she know that some futures are stranger than any fairy tale? How could she know that love sometimes has to be strong enough to cross time itself? The truck's headlights cut through the growing darkness as Marcus and Rosalie drove away from Millbrook. The radio played soft love songs, and Rosalie hummed along, her head resting on Marcus's shoulder. "Tell me where we're going," she said for the third time, poking his arm playfully. Marcus grinned, his eyes on the winding road ahead. "I told you it's a surprise, but I will say this, we're not going to Niagara Falls." Rosalie sat up straight. "We're not? But that's what we told everyone. That's where we booked the hotel." "I cancelled it yesterday," Marcus said, looking pleased with himself. "I found something much better, something that will be just ours." They had been driving for 2 hours when Marcus pulled into a small roadside diner. The neon sign flickered, May's 24-hour diner, best coffee in 3 counties. "I'm starving," Rosalie realized. "We barely ate anything at the reception. I was too excited." The diner was nearly empty except for a trucker at the counter and an elderly waitress with kind eyes and grey hair pulled back in a neat bun. "Well, look at you two," the waitress said as they slid into a corner booth. Her name tag read May. "Honeymooners, I'd guess. You both have that glow." Rosalie blushed and smoothed her wedding dress. "Is it that obvious?" "Honey, I've been working here for 30 years. I can spot newlyweds from a mile away. And you two? You're about the happiest couple I've ever served." May brought them coffee and pie. Apple for Marcus, cherry for Rosalie. While they ate, Marcus pulled out a folded paper from his jacket pocket. "What's that?" Rosalie asked. "This," Marcus said, unfolding it carefully, "is our real honeymoon destination." It was a hand-drawn map, sketched in Marcus's neat handwriting. It showed winding roads, forest trails, and at the center, a small drawing of a waterfall with the words "Paradise Falls" written underneath. "You drew this?" Rosalie traced the lines with her finger. "I found this place 6 months ago during a ranger survey," Marcus explained, his voice growing excited. "It's deep in the Cascade Mountains, in a restricted area where tourists never go. The waterfall is 60 feet high, and the pool at the bottom is so clear you can see straight to the bottom. There are wildflowers everywhere, and the sound of the water is like music." Rosalie studied the map. The location looked very remote, surrounded by thick forests and steep mountains. "It's beautiful, but Marcus, how far is it? This looks like it's in the middle of nowhere." "That's what makes it perfect," Marcus said, taking her hands across the table. "Rose, do you remember what I told you about my parents?" She nodded. Marcus's father had died in Vietnam when Marcus was only 8 years old. His mother had raised him alone until she passed away when he was 22. "My mother used to tell me stories about her and Dad when they were young," Marcus continued. "She said the secret to their happiness was that they found their own special place in the world, a place that belonged just to them. When Dad went to war, Mom said she could close her eyes and picture their special place, and it made her feel like he was still with her." Rosalie felt tears prick her eyes. "Oh, Marcus, I want us to have that," he said softly, "a place that's ours alone. When we're old and grey, we can remember our first days as husband and wife in the most beautiful spot on earth." They refilled their coffee cups and couldn't help but overhear. "Young man, that's about the sweetest thing I've heard in years. But those mountains can be tricky. You sure you know the way?" Marcus patted his ranger badge proudly. "I've been exploring these forests since I was 12. I know them better than my own backyard." Well then, May said with a smile, you two have a wonderful adventure, and you come back and tell me all about it, you hear? We will, Rosalie promised. Back in the truck, Rosalie opened her purse and pulled out a small leather diary, a wedding gift from Lily. I want to write about today while it's still fresh in my memory. By the dashboard light, she wrote, June 15, 1985, 11:30 p.m. Today I married the most wonderful man in the world. The ceremony was perfect. The reception was magical. And now we're driving through the night to a secret place that Marcus found just for us. I can't believe how lucky I am. Marcus says we're going somewhere no one has ever honeymooned before. I can't wait to see what tomorrow brings. I feel like I'm living in a fairy tale, and Marcus is my prince taking me to an enchanted kingdom. I love being Mrs. Webb. I love how it sounds. I love how it feels. I love how Marcus's eyes light up when he looks at me. I never knew it was possible to be this happy. Mom always said that the best adventures happen when you're brave enough to say yes to the unknown. Well, I'm saying yes to everything, to Marcus, to love, to whatever wonderful surprises are waiting for us in the mountains. She closed the diary and looked out at the dark forest rushing past their windows. Somewhere ahead was their secret paradise, their own special place in the world. Are you tired? Marcus asked. We can stop at a motel if you want. No, Rosalie said, snuggling closer to him. I'm too excited to sleep. Besides, I like this, just you and me and the open road. It feels like we're the only two people in the world. That's exactly how I want you to feel, Marcus said, kissing the top of her head. They drove through the night, deeper into the mountains. The radio started to crackle with static as they moved away from civilization. The roads became narrower, more winding. Tall pine trees crowded close on both sides, their branches reaching overhead like a green tunnel. Look at all those stars, Rosalie whispered, peering through the windshield. Without the lights of town, the sky was blazing with more stars than she had ever seen. Just wait until you see them from our waterfall, Marcus said. With no light pollution at all, it's like the whole universe is putting on a show just for you. As they climbed higher into the mountains, Rosalie felt a little flutter of nervousness. The forest looked so wild, so empty. But Marcus seemed completely confident, humming along with the radio and checking his map at every turn. Almost there, he said as the first hints of dawn touched the sky. By tonight, Mrs. Webb, we'll be camping under the stars next to the most beautiful waterfall in the world. Rosalie smiled and squeezed his hand. Whatever was waiting for them in the mountains, they would face it together. That was all that mattered. She had no way of knowing that some fairy tales have darker magic than others. She had no way of knowing that some enchanted kingdoms don't let visitors leave. The sun was just peeking over the mountain peaks when Marcus pulled the truck to a stop at a small dirt clearing. Ancient pine trees towered around them, their branches so thick they blocked out most of the morning light. This is it, Marcus announced, stretching as he climbed out of the truck. The start of our adventure. Rosalie stepped out and immediately shivered. The mountain air was much colder than she had expected, and her wedding dress offered little warmth. Bruh, I didn't think it would be this chilly. Don't worry, Marcus said, pulling a backpack from the truck bed. I packed warm clothes for both of us, and hiking boots for you too. Hiking boots? Rosalie looked down at her delicate white wedding shoes. How far are we walking? Marcus consulted his hand-drawn map. About 3 miles. The trail isn't too bad, mostly downhill once we get past the first ridge. Rosalie changed into jeans, a warm sweater, and the hiking boots Marcus had brought. But she kept her grandmother's pearl necklace and carefully folded her wedding dress into her backpack. I want to wear it again when we get to the waterfall, she explained. For something special. Marcus loaded his ranger gear, a first aid kit, rope, compass, water bottles, and enough food for 3 days. He also packed Rosalie's instant camera. She had been taking pictures all weekend and wanted to capture their secret honeymoon spot. "Ready for an adventure, Mrs. Webb?" he asked, shouldering his pack. "Ready," she said, though the forest around them looked much darker and wilder than anything she had imagined. The trail started out easy, winding through meadows filled with wildflowers. Rosalie stopped every few minutes to take pictures of Marcus pointing the way, of herself grinning beside a towering pine tree, of the mountains rising majestically in the distance. "This is already the most beautiful place I've ever seen," she said, snapping another photo. But after an hour of hiking, the trail became much harder. They had to climb over fallen logs and scramble up steep, rocky slopes. Rosalie's legs began to ache, and she was breathing hard. "You okay?" Marcus asked, noticing her struggle. "I'm fine," Rosalie said, though she wasn't sure that was true, just not used to mountain hiking. Marcus looked at his map, frowning slightly. The landmarks didn't quite match what he remembered from his ranger survey 6 months ago. Had that boulder always been there? Was the trail supposed to curve left or right at this point? But he didn't want to worry Rosalie, so he kept his concerns to himself. "Look," Rosalie said suddenly, pointing ahead. "Is that smoke?" Through the trees they could see a thin wisp of grey smoke rising into the sky. "Probably just another hiker with a campfire," Marcus said, though something felt wrong. This area was supposed to be restricted. No one else should be here. They followed the smoke and found something that broke both their hearts. A young deer lying beside the trail, its leg caught in an old wire trap. "Oh no," Rosalie whispered, dropping to her knees beside the injured animal. "Marcus, we have to help it." The deer was weak and frightened, but it didn't try to run when Marcus approached. He could see that the wire was cutting into its leg, but not deep enough to cause permanent damage. "Hold its head gently," Marcus told Rosalie. "Talk to it, keep it calm." Rosalie stroked the deer's soft fur and whispered soothing words while Marcus carefully worked to free the trapped leg. It took nearly 20 minutes, but finally the wire came loose. "There you go, little one," Rosalie said as the deer struggled to its feet. For a moment it stood there looking at them with large, grateful eyes. Then it bounded away into the forest, moving easily on its freed leg. "We did it," Rosalie said, tears of joy in her eyes. "We saved it." "We make a good team," Marcus said, pulling her into his arms. "Just like I knew we would." They hiked for another 2 hours, but Marcus was becoming more worried with each step. Nothing looked quite right. The trail seemed different, more overgrown. The trees were thicker than he remembered, and the mountains didn't match his map exactly. "Marcus," Rosalie said finally, "are you sure we're going the right way? We've been walking for 3 hours, and you said it was only a 3-mile hike." Marcus stopped and looked around, trying to hide his growing panic. "The trail might be longer than I thought, or maybe we took a wrong turn somewhere. Are we lost?" Rosalie asked, though she tried to keep her voice light. "No," Marcus said quickly. "I know these mountains. I'm a ranger, remember? It's just taking a little longer than expected." But inside, doubt was growing. What if his map was wrong? What if he had misremembered the location? What if he had made a terrible mistake bringing Rosalie to such a remote place? Then, through the trees ahead, they heard it, the distant sound of rushing water. "Do you hear that?" Rosalie asked, her face lighting up. "The waterfall," Marcus said, relief flooding through him. "We found it." They pushed through the last section of forest, their hearts pounding with excitement. The sound of water grew louder and louder until finally they broke through the trees and saw it. Paradise Falls. But it wasn't quite what Marcus remembered. The waterfall was bigger than he had expected, much bigger. Water thundered down from a height of nearly 80 feet, not 60 like he remembered. The pool at the bottom churned with white foam, and the rocks around it were slick and dangerous looking. but it was still breathtakingly beautiful. Rainbows danced in the mist, and wildflowers carpeted the ground around the pool. The sound was incredible, like nature's own symphony. "Marcus," Rosalie breathed, "it's magnificent." "It's different than I remembered," Marcus admitted. "Bigger, more powerful." "It's perfect," Rosalie said, already pulling out her camera. "I have to get closer for pictures." "Be careful," Marcus warned, but he was caught up in her excitement. After the stress of the difficult hike and his worry about the trail, seeing Rosalie's joy made everything worthwhile. They spent the afternoon exploring the area around the waterfall. Rosalie took dozens of pictures while Marcus set up their campsite in a small clearing nearby. The forest felt ancient and magical, untouched by the modern world. As evening approached, dark clouds began gathering over the mountains. "Looks like we might get some rain tonight," Marcus observed, testing the guy lines on their tent. "I don't mind," Rosalie said, sitting on a fallen log and writing in a diary. "It'll be romantic, listening to the rain on the tent roof." But Marcus felt uneasy as he watched the storm clouds building. They were moving fast, and they looked darker than any summer storm he had ever seen. The first drops of rain began to fall just as the sun disappeared behind the mountains. Neither of them knew that this storm would change everything. Neither of them knew that some storms wash away more than just the trail home. The first raindrops were gentle, pattering softly on the leaves above their heads. Rosalie looked up and laughed as a drop landed on her nose. "It's starting," she said, closing her diary and tucking it safely into her backpack. "Should we get in the tent?" Marcus studied the darkening sky. The clouds were moving faster now, rolling over the mountain peaks like a grey blanket. "Let's wait a few more minutes. I want to make sure everything is secure." But within an hour, the gentle rain had become a downpour. Wind howled through the trees, bending them like straws. Lightning flashed across the sky, followed by crashes of thunder that echoed off the canyon walls. "Marcus," Rosalie called over the noise of the storm. "The tent is leaking." Water was seeping through the fabric faster than it could run off. Their sleeping bags were getting soaked, and the wind was so strong that the tent poles were bending dangerously. "We need to find better shelter," Marcus shouted back, grabbing their most important supplies. "I saw a cave behind the waterfall. We can wait out the storm there." They stuffed their backpacks with essentials: food, water, dry clothes, Rosalie's camera, and diary. Everything else would have to stay behind. The run to the waterfall was terrifying. Rain lashed their faces, and the ground had become slippery mud. Tree branches crashed down around them, missing them by mere feet. "There," Marcus pointed through the storm. Behind the thundering waterfall they could see a dark opening in the rock face. Getting to the cave meant climbing over wet, slippery rocks with the waterfall spraying them and the wind trying to knock them down. Marcus went first, testing each step carefully, then helped Rosalie across. The cave was larger than they had expected, stretching back into the mountain much farther than their flashlight could reach. But it was dry and safe from the storm raging outside. "Look at this," Rosalie said, shining her flashlight on the cave walls. Strange drawings covered the rock, ancient pictures of animals, people, and symbols they didn't understand. "Petroglyphs," Marcus said, awed. "Native American rock art." These could be hundreds of years old. Some of the drawings seemed to show people near a waterfall, just like where they were now. Others showed swirling patterns that looked almost like clouds or wind. And strangest of all, some seemed to show the same figures over and over again, as if the artist had drawn the same scene many times. "It's like a story," Rosalie said, tracing the drawings with her finger. "But I can't figure out what it means." They made a small camp in the cave, spreading out their sleeping bags and sharing cold sandwiches by flashlight. Outside, the storm raged on. The sound of rain and thunder mixed with the constant roar of the waterfall. "I'm sorry," Marcus said quietly. "This isn't the romantic honeymoon I planned." Rosalie moved closer to him, resting her head on his shoulder. Are you kidding? This is the most exciting thing that's ever happened to me. We're like explorers in an undiscovered cave, surrounded by ancient art. It's magical, even though we're cold and wet and stuck in the middle of nowhere. Especially because of that, she said, kissing his cheek. Marcus, anyone can go to Niagara Falls and stay in a fancy hotel, but how many people get to spend their honeymoon in a secret cave behind a waterfall? We'll have the best story to tell our children someday. They talked for hours, their voices mixing with the sound of the storm. Marcus told her about his dreams of becoming a head ranger, protecting vast areas of wilderness. Rosalie shared her plans for her kindergarten classroom and how she wanted to teach children to love nature the way Marcus had taught her. I want to have 3 children, she said dreamily. 2 boys and a girl. The boys will be like you, gentle and kind and brave. The girl will be like me, curious about everything and not afraid of adventures. What will we name them? Marcus asked, playing along. The girl will be Elena, after my mother. The boys, maybe David and Thomas, strong names for strong boys. Marcus pulled her closer. They'll be lucky to have you as their mother. They'll be lucky to have you as their father too. The storm lasted for 3 days. On the 2nd day, their food ran low. On the 3rd day, the rain finally stopped. But when they climbed out of the cave, they found a world transformed. Trees had fallen across the trail. Landslides had wiped out entire sections of the path. The gentle stream they had followed to reach the waterfall was now a raging river, impossible to cross. The trail is completely gone, Marcus said, staring at the destruction. I can't even tell which direction we came from. What do we do? Rosalie asked, though she tried to keep the fear out of her voice. I'll hike out and get help, Marcus decided. You stay here where it's safe. I'll mark my path so I can find my way back to you. No, Rosalie said firmly. We stick together. We're a team, remember? But Marcus had already made up his mind. Rose, this isn't a game. I could get lost out there. If we both go and something happens, no one will ever find us. At least this way you'll be safe in the cave, and I'll come back with a rescue team. Marcus, please don't leave me alone. I have to, he said, holding her tight. You're the most important thing in my world. I won't risk losing you. He packed light, just water, a compass and some trail markers. I'll be back in 2 days, 3 at the most. Stay in the cave, stay warm and don't worry about me. I know these mountains. I love you, Rosalie said, tears in her eyes. I love you too, more than anything. Marcus kissed her goodbye and disappeared into the forest. For the first day, Rosie stayed in the cave as he had asked. She organized their remaining supplies, wrote in her diary, and studied the strange petroglyphs on the walls. Some of them seemed almost familiar now, as if she had seen them in dreams. On the 2nd day, when Marcus didn't return, she began to worry. On the 3rd day, she couldn't stand waiting anymore. She had to find him. She left a note in the cave, packed what little food remained, and set out into the wilderness to search for her husband. She had no way of knowing that Marcus was lost, wandering in circles just 2 miles away, desperately trying to find his way back to her. She had no way of knowing that her decision to leave the cave would change everything. She had no way of knowing that some searches lead to places where time itself gets lost. Marcus stumbled through the forest for 3 days, his compass spinning wildly and his trail markers nowhere to be found. Every tree looked the same. Every path led to dead ends or cliffs. The storm had changed everything, and nothing matched the landscape he thought he knew. On the 3rd night, weak and exhausted, he finally found a logging road that led back to civilization. A truck driver picked him up and rushed him to the nearest town, where Marcus immediately called for help. My wife is missing, he told the emergency dispatcher, his voice cracking with exhaustion and fear. She's alone in the mountains. We need search and rescue right now." Within hours, Sheriff Tom Brennan arrived with a full search team. Marcus had never been so glad to see his old friend's face. "Son, what happened out there?" Tom asked, wrapping a blanket around Marcus's shoulders. Marcus told the whole story. The storm, the cave, his decision to leave Rosalie behind. With each word, the guilt ate at him more. "I should never have left her, Tom. I should have stayed with her." "You did what you thought was right," Tom said firmly. "Now let's go get her back." The search team was the best in the state. Experienced mountain rescue workers, tracking dogs, and 2 helicopters joined the effort. Marcus led them to where he thought the waterfall should be, but even with his ranger training, he struggled to find the exact location. "The storm changed everything," he explained to the search coordinator, Captain Sarah Mills. "Landmarks I've known for years are just gone." They searched for 6 days straight. The dogs picked up scent trails that led in circles. The helicopters spotted the waterfall from above, but finding a safe way down proved nearly impossible. When they finally reached the cave behind the waterfall, they found Rosalie's note, "Gone to look for Marcus. Will return by sunset. If you find this, we are both looking for each other. Please help us find our way home. Rosalie Webb." The note was dated 4 days ago. "She's out there somewhere," Marcus said, staring at his wife's handwriting. "She's lost because I left her alone." Captain Mills put a hand on his shoulder. "We'll find her, Marcus. We have teams covering every square mile of these mountains." But as the days passed, the search area grew larger and larger. Rosalie could be anywhere in thousands of acres of wilderness. The teams found scattered evidence, a piece of fabric caught on a branch, footprints in soft mud that might have been hers, the wrapper from one of their energy bars, but no Rosalie. On the 10th day, a search dog named Rex led his handler to a steep cliff near the waterfall. At the bottom of the cliff, caught on a tree branch 20 feet down, they found one of Rosalie's hiking boots. "She fell," Captain Mills said quietly, looking down at the rocky ravine below. "No one could survive a fall from this height." "No," Marcus said, shaking his head violently. "She's alive. I would know if she wasn't alive. I would feel it." The search team rappelled down the cliff, but they found no body, just the one boot, hanging like a sad flag in the wind. "Maybe she survived the fall," suggested one of the searchers. "Maybe she's hurt somewhere, unable to call for help." They searched the ravine for 3 more days, following every stream, checking every cave, calling Rosalie's name until their voices echoed off the canyon walls. But they found nothing else. Meanwhile, news of the missing bride had reached Millbrook. The whole town was in shock. Rosalie's parents, Elena and David Chen, drove to the mountains to join the search. Her sister Lily took time off from her summer job to help coordinate volunteers. "This can't be happening," Elena sobbed, clutching Rosalie's wedding photo. "She was just married. She was so happy. How can she just be gone?" Lily organized search parties of townspeople who knew and loved Rosalie. Teachers from the school, parents of her kindergarten students, and neighbors who had watched her grow up all came to help. May, the elderly waitress from the diner, drove up from town with hot food for the searchers. "That sweet girl and her husband," May said, ladling soup into paper cups. "I should have made them stay at the diner until the storm passed. I should have warned them more about those mountains." The volunteers searched places the professionals had missed: old hunting trails, abandoned mining shafts, hidden valleys where someone might take shelter. But week after week, they found nothing. Marcus refused to give up. Even after the official search was called off, he stayed in the mountains. He knew every inch of the search area by now, but he kept looking anyway. He grew thin and wild-looking, sleeping in his truck and eating cold canned food. Tom Brennan visited him regularly, bringing supplies and trying to talk sense into him. "Son, you need to come home," Tom said one evening, finding Marcus sitting by a campfire near the waterfall. "You're killing yourself out here." "She's alive, Tom," Marcus said, staring into the flames. "I can feel her. Sometimes at night I hear her calling my name. She's out there somewhere, and she's waiting for me to find her." "Marcus, it's been 2 months. If Rosalie was alive, we would have found some sign of her by now." "Then we're not looking in the right places," Marcus said stubbornly. "Tomorrow, I'm going to search the area past Eagle Ridge." "I haven't been there yet." Tom sighed. He had watched Marcus waste away for weeks, driven by guilt and grief and desperate hope. What if we don't find her? What if she's really gone? You have to start thinking about that possibility. "Never," Marcus said. "I'll never stop looking. I promise to love her for the rest of my life. That means I don't give up. Ever." But the harsh mountain winter was coming. Soon the area would be buried under 10 feet of snow, making search impossible. Marcus would have to return to civilization whether he wanted to or not. On his last night in the mountains, he sat in the cave where they had weathered the storm together. The ancient petroglyphs seemed to watch him in the flickering light of his flashlight. The drawings of repeated figures looked almost like they were moving in the dancing shadows. "I'm sorry, Rose," he whispered to the cave walls. "I'm so sorry I left you. I'll come back in the spring. I'll keep looking until I find you, I promise." He didn't know that Rosalie was closer than he could imagine. He didn't know that she was calling his name, just as he thought he heard. He didn't know that love and desperation and the strange magic of the mountains had trapped them both in a place where time moves in circles, where the same day repeats endlessly, where two people can search for each other forever and never meet. 1 year later, June, Marcus returned to Millbrook, a changed man. The Marcus who had left for his honeymoon had been gentle and hopeful. The Marcus who came back was hollow-eyed and broken, with dark circles under his eyes and hands that shook when he thought no one was looking. He moved back into his childhood home, the same house where he had gotten ready for his wedding just 1 year ago. But now the rooms felt empty and cold. Rosalie's things were still there, a coffee mug in the kitchen sink, her books on the nightstand, a jacket hanging by the door. Marcus couldn't bring himself to move any of it. Sheriff Tom Brennan stopped by every few days, bringing groceries and checking on his old friend. But their conversations were strained and difficult. "The department wants to close the case officially," Tom said one grey morning, sitting at Marcus's kitchen table. "It's been a year, son. We've done everything we can." "Don't?" Marcus said sharply. "Don't you dare close her case. She's not dead. She's still out there." Tom studied Marcus's face, the wild look in his eyes, the way his hands trembled as he poured coffee. "Marcus, you need to talk to someone. A counselor, maybe. This guilt is eating you alive." "I don't feel guilty," Marcus lied. "I feel determined." There's a difference. But Tom wasn't the only one with concerns about Marcus. Around town, people had started whispering. Not everyone believed his story about the storm and the cave and leaving Rosalie behind to find help. At Murphy's General Store, old Mrs. Patterson leaned across the counter to whisper to her customers, "If you ask me, something doesn't add up. A forest ranger gets lost in his own mountains, and they never found a body." "Hush, Dolores," said her friend Mary. "That boy loved Rosalie. Everyone could see it." "Love can turn dangerous," Mrs. Patterson replied darkly. "Maybe he loved her too much. Maybe she tried to leave him and he couldn't let her go." The rumors spread like poison through the small town. Some people defended Marcus, remembering how devoted he had been to Rosalie, but others began to look at him sideways when he walked down Main Street. At the post office, conversations stopped when Marcus walked in. At the diner, people moved to different tables. Children who had once waved at the friendly ranger now hid behind their mother's skirt. The whispers followed him everywhere. "Did you hear Marcus Webb is back in town? I heard they never found the body." "My sister's friend said the police think he did something to his wife." Marcus tried to return to his job with the Forest Service, but he couldn't concentrate. Every tree reminded him of searching for Rosalie. Every trail made him think of the path he should have taken to find help faster. His supervisor, Frank Morrison, called him into the office after Marcus got lost during a routine patrol. "Take more time off," Frank said kindly, "as much as you need. Your job will be here when you're ready." But Marcus knew he would never be ready. How could he protect the wilderness when he had failed to protect the person he loved most? Meanwhile, the Chen family was falling apart in their own way. Rosalie's father, David, had developed serious heart problems from the stress. He spent most days sitting in his recliner, staring at the wedding photos that covered every surface of the living room. Elena had lost 30 pounds and barely spoke to anyone. She attended every missing persons support group within 50 miles, desperate to find someone who understood her pain. "The not knowing is the worst part," she told the other families. "If I knew she was gone, I could grieve. If I knew she was alive, I could hope. But this is torture." Lily had changed too. At 20, she was supposed to be enjoying college and dating and planning her future. Instead, she spent every weekend driving to the mountains, following up on tips from hikers who thought they might have seen someone matching Rosalie's description. She also found herself studying Marcus whenever she saw him around town. Part of her wanted to believe he was innocent, the grieving husband everyone thought he was, but another part of her couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong with his story. "Why didn't you bring her with you when you went for help?" she asked him one day, cornering him outside the post office. Marcus looked startled. "I told you it was too dangerous. I wanted to keep her safe. But you knew those mountains better than anyone. If it was safe enough for you, why wasn't it safe enough for both of you?" "Because I couldn't risk losing her," Marcus said, his voice breaking. "Don't you understand? I was trying to protect her." "But you lost her anyway," Lily said coldly, "and now we'll never know what really happened." The accusation hit Marcus like a physical blow. He staggered backward, his face white with shock and pain. "You think I hurt her?" he whispered. "You think I killed my own wife?" "I don't know what to think," Lily said, tears streaming down her face. "All I know is that my sister is gone, and you're the only one who knows why." After that confrontation, Marcus became even more isolated. He stopped going to town except when absolutely necessary. He stopped answering his phone. He stopped taking care of himself, living on canned soup and stale bread. The only time he felt alive was when he drove back to the mountains. Every weekend he returned to the waterfall, searching the same trails over and over again. Sometimes he would sit in the cave where they had weathered the storm together, talking to the ancient petroglyphs as if they could give him answers. "Where is she?" he would ask the painted figures on the wall. "What happened to my wife?" But the petroglyphs remained silent, their strange patterns seeming to shift and dance in the light of his flashlight. On the first anniversary of Rosalie's disappearance, Marcus sat alone at the waterfall as the sun set. He pulled out the wedding ring he still wore and stared at it in the fading light. For one terrible moment he considered taking it off and throwing it into the pool below. Maybe that would finally end the pain. Maybe that would set him free from the endless cycle of hope and despair. But he couldn't do it. As long as he wore the ring, part of Rosalie was still with him. He had no way of knowing that she was wearing her ring too, trapped in her own endless loop of searching and hoping. He had no way of knowing that their love was the very thing keeping them prisoner. 5 years later, spring, the moving truck pulled away from Marcus's childhood home on a rainy Tuesday morning. Marcus stood on the porch for one last look at the house where he had grown up, where he had brought Rosalie as his bride, where he had spent 5 years drowning in memories and guilt. "You sure about this, son?" Tom Brennan asked, loading the last box into Marcus's pickup truck. "I have to go, Tom," Marcus said quietly. "This town is killing me slowly. Every street corner, every face, it all reminds me of her. I can't heal here." Tom nodded sadly. He had watched Marcus waste away for years, becoming a ghost of the man he used to be. Maybe a fresh start was exactly what he needed. "Where will you go?" "Oregon. I heard about a job with the Forest Service there. Wilderness guide work mostly. It's what I'm good at, and it's far enough away that no one will know my story." "What about Rosalie? What if she comes back?" Marcus's face crumpled for a moment, then hardened with determination. "I'm leaving my new address with the sheriff's department. If there's ever any news, they'll know how to find me." As Marcus drove away from Millbrook, he didn't look back. In his rear-view mirror, he could see Tom standing in the driveway, growing smaller and smaller until he disappeared entirely. In the 5 years since Marcus left, Millbrook had slowly returned to something like normal life. The rumors about him had faded, replaced by new gossip and new tragedies. But for the Chen family, the wound never healed. Lily Chen, now 24, had become a nurse at the county hospital. She had never married, never even dated seriously. How could she trust her heart to anyone when love had proven so dangerous for her sister? "You need to live your own life," her mother Elena would say during their weekly dinners. Rosalie wouldn't want you to stop living because of what happened to her. But Lily couldn't let go. She had become obsessed with missing persons cases, volunteering with search and rescue teams on her days off. Every time someone disappeared, she threw herself into the search with desperate energy. "I couldn't save Rosalie," she told her partner Jake Morrison during one particularly difficult search for a lost hiker. "But maybe I can save someone else's sister." Jake was the sheriff's nephew, a kind man who had been trying to ask Lily out for 2 years. He could see the pain she carried, but he didn't know how to help her heal. "You can't save everyone, Lily," he said gently as they trudged through thick forest, calling for the missing hiker. "And you can't bring Rosalie back by exhausting yourself on every search." "I know that," Lily snapped, then immediately felt bad for her tone. "I'm sorry, Jake. I need to do something. I need to feel like I'm helping." Elena and David Chen had aged far beyond their years. David's heart condition had worsened, requiring 2 surgeries and a handful of medications he took every morning. Lena had thrown herself into advocacy work, becoming the head of the state's missing persons family support network. Their living room had become a shrine to Rosalie. Wedding photos, high school pictures, her college diploma, even her favorite coffee mug displayed behind glass. Visitors often felt uncomfortable, as if they were intruding on a private memorial service. "We can't move on," Elena explained to the new families who came to her support groups. "Moving on means accepting that she's gone, and I'll never accept that. Never." Sheriff Tom Brennan had retired 2 years ago, but the Rosalie Webb case file still sat open on his replacement's desk. The new sheriff, Sandra Mills, reviewed it regularly, hoping to spot something the previous investigations had missed. Sheriff Mills was a no-nonsense woman in her 40s who had come to Millbrook from the city. She brought fresh eyes to old cases, and the Webb disappearance puzzled her more than any other. "There's something strange about this whole thing," she told her deputy one afternoon, spreading Marcus and Rosalie's case files across her desk. "A forest ranger gets lost in mountains he knows like his backyard. A search that covers thousands of acres finds only one shoe, and look at this." She pointed to the weather reports from that week. The storm was bad, but not unprecedented. Other hikers have survived worse conditions in those same mountains. "You think Marcus Webb was lying about something?" the deputy asked. "I think there's more to this story than we know. But after 5 years, the trail is cold. Unless something new comes up, we'll probably never know what really happened." Meanwhile, 1,500 miles away in Oregon, Marcus had built a new life that looked almost normal from the outside. He worked as a wilderness guide for a small adventure tourism company, leading city people on hiking and camping trips through the Cascade Mountains. His boss, Carl Jensen, had hired him despite the gaps in his resume. Marcus was the best guide Carl had ever seen. He could track animals, predict weather changes, and navigate terrain that would confuse GPS devices. But Carl also noticed that Marcus never talked about his past, never mentioned family or friends back home. "He's running from something," Carl told his wife. "Something that hurt him bad, but whatever it is, he's a good man. I can." Marcus lived alone in a small cabin outside the town of Blue River. He had learned to cook simple meals, to do his own laundry, to exist without anyone else's help. But he had never learned to stop loving Rose. Her picture still sat on his nightstand. He still wore his wedding ring. When people asked if he was married, he would pause for a long moment before saying, "It's complicated." He had never dated anyone else, never even considered it. How could he, when his heart was still trapped in a cave behind a waterfall 5 years and 1,500 miles away? Sometimes, late at night when the Oregon forest was completely quiet, Marcus could swear he heard Rosalie calling his name. He would step out onto his porch and listen to the wind in the trees, hoping against hope that somehow, impossibly, she had found her way to him. But the voice was always just the wind, and Marcus would go back inside to his empty cabin and his lonely dreams. Back in the mountains where it all began, something impossible continued to happen every single day. Two figures in wedding clothes walked the same paths, called the same names, searched the same caves. The ancient petroglyphs watched their endless dance of love and loss, keeping their secrets carved in stone. Time moved forward everywhere else in the world. Children grew up, seasons changed, people fell in love and got married and built new lives. But in one small pocket of the wilderness, time moved in circles, trapping two hearts that loved too fiercely to let go. Soon technology would advance enough to see what human eyes could not. Soon a satellite would capture an image that would change everything. Soon the impossible would become undeniable. July 8, 1997, exactly 12 years after the disappearance, Dr. Sarah Martinez rubbed her tired eyes and leaned back in her chair. She had been staring at satellite images for 6 straight hours, analyzing forest coverage for the government's environmental protection program. The work was important, but mind-numbing. Endless photos of trees, rivers, and mountains that all looked the same after a while. She was about to take a coffee break when something in the latest batch of images caught her attention. "That's weird," she muttered, leaning closer to her computer screen. The satellite photo showed a remote area of the Cascade Mountains in Washington state. Most of the image was exactly what she expected: dense forest, rocky cliffs, and a waterfall cascading down into a clear pool. But near the waterfall, 2 tiny figures stood out against the natural landscape. At first glance, they looked like hikers, but something was wrong with the picture. The figures appeared to be wearing formal clothes, one in white, the other in dark colors, like wedding clothes. Sarah zoomed in, as far as the image resolution would allow. The white figure looked like a woman in a long dress. The dark figure appeared to be a man in a suit. They were standing about 50 feet apart, as if they were looking for something. "Must be a glitch," Sarah said to herself. Who would wear wedding clothes in the middle of the wilderness? But when she pulled up the next image in the sequence, taken by the same satellite 6 hours later, the figures were still there, in exactly the same position. Sarah frowned and checked the timestamps. The first image was taken at 9:30 a.m., the second at 3:30 p.m. In 6 hours, the figures hadn't moved at all. Maybe they're statues, she reasoned, some kind of art installation. But when she checked the third image, taken the following day, her blood ran cold. The figures were in slightly different positions now, but they were definitely the same two people. The woman in white had moved closer to the waterfall. The man in the dark suit was near a cluster of trees. But there was something impossible about the images. According to the satellite's records, these 3 photos had been taken on 3 different days, yet the lighting was identical in all 3 images. The shadows fell at the exact same angles. Even the water in the waterfall seemed to be frozen in the same pattern. Sarah called her supervisor, Dr. James Wright, into her cubicle. "James, look at this," she said, pulling up all 3 images side by side. "Tell me what you see." Dr. Wright was a serious man in his 50s who had been analyzing satellite data for 20 years. He studied the images carefully, adjusting his glasses and squinting at the screen. "I see 2 people in formal wear near a waterfall," he said slowly, "but that doesn't make sense." "What are the coordinates?" Sarah read off the location. "It's in a restricted wilderness area. No roads, no trails, no reason for anyone to be there. And James, look at the timestamps." Dr. Wright's eyes widened as he realized what Sarah was showing him. These were taken on different days, but the lighting is identical. "That's impossible." "It gets weirder," Sarah said, pulling up more images. "I found the same 2 figures in satellite photos going back 3 weeks. Always in this same area. Always in formal clothes. But they appear in different positions, like they're walking around, but the lighting and shadows never change." Dr. Wright was quiet for a long moment, studying the data. "Have you run diagnostics on the satellite? Could this be a technical malfunction?" "I checked everything twice. The satellite is functioning perfectly. These images are real." "Then we have a problem," Dr. Wright said grimly, "because what you're showing me violates several laws of physics." Sarah spent the rest of the day researching the location of the mysterious figures. The coordinates led her to a waterfall called Paradise Falls, deep in the Cascade Mountains of Washington. The area was part of a restricted wilderness zone off-limits to hikers and campers. But when she dug deeper into local records, she found something that made her heart race. In July 1985, exactly 12 years ago, a young couple had disappeared in those mountains during their honeymoon. Marcus and Rosalie Webb, both in their 20s, had vanished without a trace despite a massive search and rescue operation. According to the police reports, they had gone missing during a severe storm. Only one piece of evidence was ever found: Rosalie's hiking boot, caught on a tree branch near a cliff. The case had never been solved. Sarah stared at the old newspaper photo of Marcus and Rosalie Webb on their wedding day. The groom wore a dark suit. The bride wore a white dress. The same clothes as the figures in her satellite images. "This is impossible," she whispered. "They've been missing for 12 years. They can't still be up there." But the evidence was right in front of her. Somehow, impossibly, Marcus and Rosalie Webb were still in those mountains. Still wearing their wedding clothes. Still searching for each other after 12 long years. Sarah picked up her phone and dialed the sheriff's department in Millbrook, Washington. "This is Dr. Sarah Martinez with the National Environmental Satellite Program," she told the dispatcher. "I need to speak with someone about the Marcus and Rosalie Webb missing persons case. I think I've found them." Sheriff Sandra Mills was skeptical when she first received Sarah's call. She had seen plenty of false leads over the years, psychics claiming to have visions, hikers reporting sightings that turned out to be other people, even conspiracy theorists insisting that the couple had been abducted by aliens. But when Sarah emailed the satellite images, Sheriff Mills stared at her computer screen in shock. "This can't be real," she muttered, zooming in on the figures near the waterfall. But the images were undeniably authentic. The government's satellite program was one of the most advanced in the world, with resolution clear enough to count individual trees And there, captured in impossible detail, were two people in wedding clothes standing in the exact location where Marcus and Rosalie Webb had disappeared 12 years ago. Sheriff Mills immediately called her deputy. "Get me everything we have on the Webb case. Every file, every photo, every witness statement. And call the state police. We're going to need help with this." Within hours, the story had spread through the law enforcement community. The FBI was notified. Search and rescue teams were put on standby. And in a small town in Oregon, a wilderness guide named Marcus Webb was about to receive a phone call that would change his life forever. But in the mountains where it all began, time continued to move in its strange, circular dance. Two figures in wedding clothes walked the same paths they had walked every day for 12 years, searching for each other with a love so strong it had broken the laws of time itself. The impossible had finally become undeniable. The world was about to learn that some love stories are stranger than science. And somewhere in the space between heartbeats, between 1 second and the next, Marcus and Rosalie Webb continued their eternal dance of searching and hoping, trapped in a moment that would last forever. Marcus was leading a group of tourists through the Oregon wilderness when his phone buzzed. He normally kept it turned off during guided hikes, but something had made him check it that morning, a strange feeling he couldn't shake. The caller ID showed a Washington area code he didn't recognize. "This is Marcus Webb," he answered, motioning for his hiking group to take a water break. "Mr. Webb, this is Sheriff Sandra Mills from Millbrook, Washington. I need to ask you some questions about your wife, Rosalie." Marcus's blood turned to ice. After 12 years, no one called about Rosalie unless something terrible had happened. "Did you find her body?" he whispered. "Mr. Webb, I need you to sit down." "Just tell me," Marcus said, his voice shaking. "Is she dead?" "We don't know, but we may have found her. Both of you, actually." Sheriff Mills explained about the satellite images, the impossible figures in wedding clothes, the location that matched exactly where Marcus and Rosalie had disappeared. With each word, Marcus felt like he was falling through space. "That's impossible," he finally managed. "I left those mountains 12 years ago. I'm in Oregon. I'm standing in Oregon right now. You know how this sounds, Mr. Webb, but I'm emailing you the images right now. Look at them and tell me what you see." Marcus's hands shook as he opened the email on his phone. The images were grainy but clear enough. A waterfall, two figures in formal clothes, and even though the resolution was poor, Marcus recognized the location immediately. Paradise Falls, the place where his life had ended 12 years ago. "I'm getting on a plane," Marcus said. "I'll be there tonight." "Mr. Webb, before you do anything rash, you should know we're organizing an expedition to investigate. Professional search and rescue, scientific equipment, the works. This isn't something you should attempt alone." But Marcus had already hung up. He turned to his hiking group, his mind racing. "I'm sorry," he told them. "There's been a family emergency. My assistant Carl will take you back to the lodge." He was already jogging toward the trailhead, leaving behind 12 confused tourists and a lifetime of careful isolation. By evening, Marcus was on a plane to Seattle. He stared out the window at the mountains below, his heart pounding with a mixture of hope and terror. Could Rosalie really be alive? After 12 years of grieving, was it possible that she had been waiting for him all this time? But how could she still be in those mountains? How could she have survived 12 winters? And why was she wearing her wedding dress? The questions spun through his mind until his head ached. Nothing made sense, but the satellite images were real. Someone was up there, and that someone looked exactly like his wife. When the plane landed, Sheriff Mills was waiting for him at the airport. She was a stern-looking woman in her 40s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. "Mr. Webb," she said, shaking his hand, I'm sorry to meet you under these circumstances. Is she really alive? Marcus asked immediately. The woman in the images, could it be Rosalie? I don't know, Sheriff Mills said honestly. But we're going to find out. I've assembled a team to investigate tomorrow morning. I want you to come with us. They drove through the familiar streets of Millbrook, and Marcus felt like he was traveling back in time. Everything looked exactly the same shops, the same houses, even the same faded sign welcoming visitors to historic Millbrook population. But when they passed the house where he and Rosalie had lived as newlyweds, Marcus had to look away. Some wounds never healed, no matter how much time passed. Sheriff Mills had booked him a room at the town's only motel. Get some rest, she advised. Tomorrow is going to be a long day. But Marcus couldn't sleep. Instead, he walked through the empty streets of his former home, remembering happier times. He passed the church where he and Rosalie had been married. He walked by the community center, where they had danced at their reception. He even stopped at May's Diner, though it was closed and dark. Every step brought back memories that were both precious and painful. The next morning, Marcus met the expedition team at the sheriff's station. Sheriff Mills introduced him to Dr. Sarah Martinez, the satellite analyst who had made the discovery. Dr. Martinez has some theories about what we might find up there, Sheriff Mills explained. Dr. Martinez was a serious woman with intelligent eyes and an air of scientific curiosity. Mr. Webb, I've been studying these images for days. There's something very unusual about them. Unusual how? Marcus asked. The lighting never changes. In satellite photography, we can track the movement of shadows as the sun moves across the sky. But in every image of this location, the shadows are identical. It's as if time has stopped in that one spot. Marcus frowned. That doesn't make sense. No, it doesn't, Dr. Martinez agreed. According to everything we know about physics, it's impossible. But the evidence is right there in the data. The team also included Captain Rick Santos from the state police, 2 experienced mountain rescue specialists, and to Marcus's surprise, Lily. Lily looked older, more serious, but she still had Rosalie's eyes. She wore the uniform of a certified emergency medical technician and carried professional rescue equipment. Lily, Marcus said awkwardly, I didn't expect to see you here. My sister is up there, Lily said simply. If there's even a chance she's alive, I'm going to help bring her home. Are we going to have a problem? Captain Santos asked bluntly. No, she said finally. Whatever happened 12 years ago, if Rosalie is up there, she needs all of us working together to bring her home. The team loaded their vehicles with advanced equipment, electromagnetic field detectors, ground-penetrating radar, satellite communication devices, and enough supplies for a week in the wilderness. Dr. Martinez also brought specialized cameras designed to detect temporal anomalies. Temporal anomalies? Marcus asked. Time distortions, Dr. Martinez explained. I have a theory that what we're seeing in those satellite images isn't just unusual. It's scientifically impossible. The only explanation I can think of is some kind of disruption in the normal flow of time. Marcus stared at her. Are you saying my wife is trapped in time? I'm saying we need to be prepared for anything. The laws of physics seem to work differently in that location. As they drove toward the mountains, Marcus felt like he was returning to the scene of his worst nightmare. But he also felt something he hadn't experienced in 12 years. Hope. If Rosalie was really up there, if she was somehow still alive, then nothing else mattered. Not the impossible science, not the years of pain, not even the suspicious looks from Lily in the rearview mirror. He was going to see his wife again. The convoy of vehicles wound up the mountain roads as the sun climbed higher in the sky. Behind them, the town of Millbrook grew smaller and smaller until it disappeared entirely. Ahead of them lay Paradise Falls and the impossible truth that waited there. Marcus pressed his wedding ring against his chest and whispered a prayer he had repeated every day for 12 years. Please let me find her. Please let me bring her home. He had no way of knowing that Rosalie was whispering the exact same prayer at the exact same moment, trapped in a loop of time where all prayers echoed endlessly, but never reached heaven. The satellite images show the figures approximately 3 miles in, Dr. Martinez said, checking her equipment. But the terrain is rough. It could take us most of the day to reach the location. Captain Santos organized the team like a military operation. We stay together, we communicate constantly, and nobody takes any risks. If these people have been surviving up here for 12 years, we need to assume the area is more dangerous than it appears. Lily checked her medical supplies one more time. She had brought everything needed to treat severe injuries, malnutrition, and exposure. If it really is Rosalie up there, she said quietly, she might need immediate medical attention. The hike began easily enough, following the same trail Marcus had taken 12 years ago. But as they climbed higher, the forest seemed to change around them. The trees grew thicker, the shadows deeper, birds fell silent. Even the sound of their footsteps seemed muffled and strange. She frowned at her electromagnetic field detector. There's definitely something unusual ahead. The readings are getting stronger as we get closer to the waterfall. Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the mountain air. Eep. I remember this place being different. More open. The trees weren't this thick 12 years ago. Landscapes change over time, one of the rescue specialists said. Storms, erosion, new growth. But Marcus shook his head. Not this much. Not this dramatically. After 2 hours of hiking, they heard it. The distant sound of rushing water. Paradise Falls was close. The figures should be visible soon, Dr. Martinez said, checking her GPS coordinates. According to the satellite data, they're usually near the waterfall around this time of day. They pushed through the last section of forest, their hearts pounding with anticipation. The sound of water grew louder and louder until finally they broke through the trees and saw it. Paradise Falls. Exactly as Marcus remembered it. But there was no one there. Where are they? Lily asked, scanning the area around the waterfall. The satellite images show them here every day. Dr. Martinez checked her equipment frantically. The electromagnetic readings are off the charts. Something is definitely happening here. But I don't see any people. Marcus walked to the edge of the pool, his eyes searching every shadow, every rock formation. Rosalie, he called out. Rosalie. His voice echoed off the canyon walls, but there was no answer. They spent an hour searching the immediate area, calling out and looking for any sign of human presence. They found nothing, no footprints, no camping equipment, no evidence that anyone had been there recently. Maybe the satellite data was wrong, Captain Santos suggested. Maybe it was just rocks or shadows that looked like people. But Dr. Martinez shook her head. I've analyzed those images 100 times. Those were definitely human figures. As the afternoon wore on, the team began to lose hope. They had come so far, prepared for anything, only to find an empty waterfall and unanswered questions. Then, just as the sun began to set, something impossible happened. Look, Lily whispered, pointing toward the waterfall. 2 figures materialized near the water's edge, as if they had stepped out of thin air. A woman in a white wedding dress. A man in a dark suit. Marcus's heart stopped. Even from a distance, even after 12 years, he knew that silhouette. Rosalie, he breathed. The woman turned, and Marcus saw her face clearly for the first time in 12 years. She looked exactly the same as she had on their wedding day, young, beautiful, and completely unchanged by time. Marcus, she called out, her voice carrying across the water. Marcus, is that you? Marcus started running toward her, but Dr. Martinez grabbed his arm. "Wait," she said urgently. "Look at your watch." Marcus glanced down and gasped. His digital watch was spinning wildly, the numbers changing too fast to read. Around him, the electromagnetic field detectors were screaming with alarms. "Time distortion," Dr. Martinez said. "Just like I theorized, there's a temporal anomaly centered on this location." Near the waterfall, Rosie was running toward the man in the dark suit. But it wasn't Marcus. It was a different version of Marcus, one trapped in the same temporal loop as his wife. "They're reliving the same moments over and over," Dr. Martinez explained in wonder. "Somehow, when they disappeared 12 years ago, they became trapped in a repeating cycle of time." Marcus watched in horror and fascination as the scene played out. The temporal versions of himself and Rosalie searched for each other, calling out names that echoed strangely in the distorted air. But no matter how close they came, they could never quite reach each other. "How is this possible?" Lily asked, tears streaming down her face as she watched her sister trapped in an endless loop. "The geological conditions here are unique," Dr. Martinez said, taking rapid readings with her instruments. "Underground mineral deposits creating electromagnetic fields, combined with the specific weather patterns during that storm 12 years ago. It created a perfect storm of temporal distortion." "Can we get them out?" Marcus demanded. "Can we break the loop?" Dr. Martinez studied her readings carefully. "Maybe. The temporal field seems to reset every few hours. If we can disrupt it at exactly the right moment." They watched the heartbreaking scene continue. Temporal Marcus and Rosalie searched desperately for each other, always missing by minutes or moments. Their love had become their prison, trapping them in an endless cycle of hope and despair. "They've been doing this for 12 years, Lily said softly. "Every day the same search, the same hope, the same heartbreak." Marcus clenched his fists, watching another version of himself call out for Rosalie while she searched for him in the wrong direction. "We have to save them. We have to break the loop." "It's dangerous," Dr. Martinez warned. "If we disrupt the temporal field incorrectly, we could destroy them entirely. Or worse, we could get trapped in the loop ourselves." "I don't care," Marcus said. "She's been waiting for me for 12 years. I won't leave her there for another day." As night fell, the team made camp near the waterfall. They could see the temporal figures moving through their endless dance, always searching, never finding. The sight was both beautiful and heartbreaking, a love so strong it had broken time itself, but also a prison that neither could escape. "Tomorrow," Dr. Martinez said, studying her instruments, "we attempt the rescue. But everyone needs to understand, once we start, there's no turning back. We either free them both, or we lose them forever." Marcus stared at the temporal version of his wife, so close he could almost touch her, yet separated by 12 years, and the laws of physics. "I've already lost her once," he said quietly. "I won't lose her again." Dawn came with a strange golden light that seemed to shimmer around Paradise Falls. Dr. Martinez had spent the night monitoring the temporal field, mapping its patterns and cycles. "The loop resets every 4 hours and 17 minutes, she explained to the team as they gathered around her equipment. "That's when the electromagnetic field is weakest. We'll have approximately 90 seconds to disrupt the pattern." Marcus hadn't slept at all. He had spent the night watching the temporal versions of himself and Rosalie repeat their heartbreaking search. Every cycle was exactly the same. The same movements, the same calls, the same near misses that left them forever apart. "What exactly do we need to do?" Captain Santos asked, checking his watch. "The next reset was in 30 minutes. Dr. Martinez pointed to a cluster of strange metallic rocks near the waterfall. "Those mineral deposits are the key. They're creating a natural electromagnetic field that's trapping Marcus and Rosalie in a temporal loop. If we can disrupt that field with a controlled electromagnetic pulse, it should collapse the anomaly. And then what happens to them? Lily asked, her voice tight with worry. If we time it right, they should be pulled back into normal time. They'll be exactly as they were the moment they entered the loop 12 years ago. And if we time it wrong? Marcus asked. Dr. Martinez hesitated. The temporal shock could kill them instantly, or they could be scattered across time, lost forever in the space between seconds. Marcus studied the temporal figures of himself and Rosalie as they began another cycle of their endless search. What are our chances of success? Honestly, maybe 50-50. This is completely uncharted science. No one has ever attempted anything like this before. Those aren't great odds, Captain Santos said grimly. They're better than leaving her trapped forever, Marcus replied. At least this way, we're giving her a chance. Lily watched her sister moving through the temporal loop, calling Marcus's name with the same hope she had carried for 12 years. Rosalie would want us to try. She was never afraid of taking risks when it mattered. Dr. Martinez began setting up the electromagnetic pulse generator, a device she had adapted from government storm research equipment. Everyone needs to stay at least 50 yards back when I activate this. The electromagnetic pulse could interfere with pacemakers, electronic devices, even brain activity if you're too close. As they prepared for the rescue attempt, Marcus found himself remembering their wedding day. How confident he had felt, how certain that their love could overcome anything. Now 12 years later, he was about to literally gamble with time itself to save that love. 15 minutes to reset, Dr. Martinez announced. The temporal figures were nearing the end of their current cycle. Marcus watched his other self calling desperately for Rosalie while she searched in the wrong direction just yards away from him. The frustration was unbearable. I want to be as close as possible when you activate the pulse, Marcus told Dr. Martinez. If something goes wrong, if they need help, I want to be there. That's too dangerous, Captain Santos protested. The electromagnetic field could kill you. I didn't come this far to watch from a safe distance, Marcus said firmly. That's my wife in there. I'm not hiding 50 yards away while she fights for her life. Dr. Martinez checked her instruments one last time. The field strength is building. 5 minutes to optimal disruption window. Lily moved closer to Marcus. Despite 12 years of suspicion and anger, seeing her sister trapped in the temporal loop had changed everything. Marcus, I want you to know I believe you now. I can see how much you love her. I'm sorry I ever doubted you. Marcus nodded, his throat tight with emotion. All that matters now is getting her back. 2 minutes, Dr. Martinez called out. Everyone except Marcus needs to move back now. The team retreated to the safe zone while Marcus crept closer to the temporal field. He could feel the electromagnetic energy crackling in the air around him, making his skin tingle and his hair stand on end. The temporal figures were beginning to fade, signaling the end of their current cycle. In moments the loop would reset, and Dr. Martinez would have her chance. 30 seconds, she announced, her finger hovering over the activation switch. Marcus watched the temporal version of himself reach the cave behind the waterfall, the same cave where he and Rosalie had weathered the storm 12 years ago. Temporal Rosalie was searching near the pool, her wedding dress glowing white in the strange golden light. 10 seconds, Dr. Martinez called out. Marcus held his breath. Everything, their past, their future, their love that had survived 12 years of separation, came down to this moment. Now, Dr. Martinez shouted and activated the pulse generator. The effect was immediate and terrifying. The air around Paradise Falls exploded with blinding white light. The electromagnetic field detector screamed with alarms before shorting out completely. The waterfall itself seemed to freeze in mid-air, each droplet of water suspended like crystal. Marcus felt the pulse hit him like a physical blow, knocking him to his knees. His vision blurred, and for a moment he couldn't tell which way was up. The world spun around him in impossible colors and geometries. Then, suddenly, everything went silent. The white light faded. The waterfall resumed its normal flow. The strange golden shimmer around the area disappeared, leaving only ordinary morning sunlight. And there, collapsed near the water's edge, were two figures in wedding clothes. "Rosalie!" Marcus shouted, stumbling toward them on unsteady legs. The woman in the white dress was unconscious but breathing. Her hair was still perfectly styled from their wedding day. Her grandmother's pearl necklace still gleamed around her throat. She looked exactly as she had the morning Marcus left her in the cave 12 years ago. The temporal version of Marcus was lying nearby, also unconscious. As the real Marcus knelt beside his wife, the temporal version began to fade like smoke, dissolving back into whatever dimension had held him. "She's alive," Lily cried, running toward them with her medical equipment. "Her pulse is strong. Her breathing is steady." Dr. Martinez stumbled over, her instruments completely fried from the electromagnetic pulse. "Did it work? Are they back in normal time?" Marcus gathered Rosalie in his arms, feeling her warm and solid and real for the first time in 12 years. "Wake up, Rose," he whispered. "Please wake up." Rosalie's eyes fluttered open. For a moment she looked confused, disoriented. Then her gaze focused on Marcus's face, and she smiled, the same radiant smile he had fallen in love with. "Marcus," she said softly, "you found me. I knew you would find me." "I'm here," he said, tears streaming down his face. "I'm here, and I'm never leaving you again." Rosalie reached up to touch his face, her fingers tracing the lines that 12 years of grief had carved there. "You look older," she said with gentle curiosity. "How long was I lost?" Marcus looked into her eyes, still young, still full of the same love and trust she had shown him on their wedding day. How could he explain that she had been gone for 12 years? How could he tell her that their love had been strong enough to break time itself? "It doesn't matter now," he said, kissing her forehead. "All that matters is that you're home." The helicopter ride to the hospital was the longest 30 minutes of Marcus's life. Rosalie drifted in and out of consciousness, her hand clutched tightly in his. Every few minutes, she would open her eyes and look around in confusion. "The cave," she mumbled during one moment of clarity. "I was looking for you in the cave. Where did you go?" "I'm right here," Marcus said, stroking her hair. "I'm not going anywhere." Dr. Martinez sat across from them, frantically taking notes on everything that had happened. "Her vital signs are completely normal," she told Lily, who was monitoring Rosalie's condition. "It's like she just took a long nap, a 12-year nap," Lily said wonderingly. "She hasn't aged a day. Look at her hands, no calluses, no scars from surviving in the wilderness. It's like time really did stop for her." At Millbrook General Hospital, news of Rosalie's return spread like wildfire. Nurses and doctors who had known her 12 years ago stared in amazement as she was wheeled through the corridors. She looked exactly the same as the young bride who had disappeared on her honeymoon. Dr. Patricia Williams, the hospital's chief physician, ran every test she could think of. Blood work, brain scans, x-rays. Everything came back completely normal, except for one impossible detail. According to every medical indicator, Rosalie Chen Webb was still 24 years old. "I've never seen anything like it," Dr. Williams told Marcus privately. "Physically, she's exactly as she was 12 years ago. But Marcus, you need to prepare yourself mentally and emotionally. She's going to need time to adjust. The world has changed a lot since." Marcus nodded, though his heart was racing with joy. After 12 years of believing he had lost her forever, having Rosalie back felt like a miracle he didn't deserve. Elena and David Chen arrived at the hospital within hours, having driven through the night from their home. When Elena saw her daughter lying in the hospital bed, looking exactly as she had on her wedding day, she collapsed into sobs. "My baby," Elena whispered, taking Rosalie's hand. "My sweet baby girl." Rosalie smiled weakly. "Hi, Mom. Why are you crying, and why does everyone look so much older?" David Chen had to sit down, his heart condition making the emotional shock almost too much to bear. His daughter, his little girl who had been missing for 12 years, was asking why he looked older. "Sweetheart," Elena said gently, "you've been gone for a long time. Much longer than you think." "How long?" Rosalie asked, looking from her parents to Marcus to Lily. "A week? A month?" Marcus squeezed her hand. "Rose, we need to talk about that when you're feeling stronger." But Rosalie was observant, just as she had always been. She noticed the lines around Marcus's eyes, the grey streaks in her father's hair, the way Lily had matured from a teenager into a woman. "Something's wrong," she said, struggling to sit up. "Everyone's different. You all look older. And where are we?" "This doesn't look like the clinic in Millbrook." Dr. Williams stepped forward. "Mrs. Webb, you're in Millbrook General Hospital. We've expanded quite a bit in recent years." "Recent years?" Rosalie's voice grew sharp with fear. "How recent?" "Marcus, what year is it?" Marcus looked helplessly at Dr. Williams, who nodded encouragingly. "It's 1997, Rose. You've been missing since..." The silence in the room was deafening. Rosalie stared at Marcus, then at her parents, then at Lily. "That's impossible. It was just yesterday. We were in the cave, and you went to get help, and I went to look for you." 12 years, she whispered finally. "You're telling me I lost 12 years? "You didn't lose them," Marcus said firmly. "You were trapped in a place where time worked differently. Dr. Martinez can explain it better than I can, but the important thing is that you're back now." Over the next few days, as Rosalie slowly absorbed the reality of her situation, the town of Millbrook rallied around the returned bride. People who had whispered suspicions about Marcus for years now felt ashamed of their doubts. The impossible nature of Rosalie's return made it clear that something supernatural had happened, something far beyond Marcus's control. May, the elderly waitress from the diner, visited Rosalie in the hospital with tears in her eyes. "I always wondered what happened to you two," she said. "You were such a happy couple. I'm so glad you found your way back to each other." Sheriff Mills officially closed the missing persons case, though she kept Dr. Martinez's scientific report classified. Some things, she told the FBI investigators who came to interview them, are better left as unsolved mysteries. The hardest part for Rosalie was understanding how much the world had changed. Technology had advanced dramatically. People she remembered as young adults were now middle-aged. Children she had taught in kindergarten were now adults with children of their own. "I feel like Rip Van Winkle," she told Marcus one evening as they sat in her hospital room. "Everyone I know has lived 12 years of life, and I slept through it all." "Not everyone," Marcus said softly. "I didn't live those 12 years either. I survived them, but I didn't really live them. I was just waiting for you to come home." Rosalie studied his face, the lines around his eyes, the grey in his hair, the weight of grief he had carried for so long. "You've been so sad," she said, touching his cheek. "I can see it in your eyes. All this time you've been missing me." "Every day," Marcus admitted, "but it was worth it. Every day of waiting was worth this moment right here." After a week in the hospital, Dr. Williams declared Rosalie physically healthy and ready to go home. But the question remained, where was Marcus's house in Oregon felt foreign to Rosie. She had never seen it, never helped choose the furniture or paint the walls. And Millbrook, while familiar, was full of painful reminders of the life they had planned but never lived. "We'll figure it out together. Marcus told her as they walked through the streets of their hometown. "We have time now. All the time in the world." They stopped at their old house, the one they had shared for 3 days as newlyweds before leaving for their honeymoon. The new owners, a young couple with 2 small children, recognized them from the news coverage and invited them in. "We always wondered about the people who lived here before us," the woman said. "There were still some of your wedding presents in the attic when we moved in. We saved them, hoping someday." She led them to the attic and showed them a box of wedding gifts they had never opened. Crystal vases, silver picture frames, a set of china they had registered for but never used. Rosalie held up a card that had been attached to one of the presents. "To Marcus and Rosalie," she read aloud. "May your love grow stronger with each passing year. Love, Aunt Margaret." She looked at Marcus with tears in her eyes. "It did grow stronger, didn't it? Even when we were apart, even when time itself tried to keep us separated, our love held on." Marcus pulled her into his arms. "Some kinds of love are stronger than time," he said. "Stronger than space, stronger than anything the universe can throw at them." As they held each other in the attic of their first home, surrounded by wedding gifts from a life they had barely begun to live, Rosalie made a decision. "I want to have that wedding reception we never really got to enjoy," she said. "I want to dance with my husband and celebrate with everyone who helped bring me home." Marcus smiled. Really smiled, for the first time in 12 years. "Mrs. Webb, I thought you'd never ask. What an incredible journey of love that conquered time itself." Marcus and Rosalie's story proves that some bonds are stronger than anything, even the laws of physics. I'd love to know where you're listening from around the world. Drop a comment below and tell me your city or country. It always amazes me how these stories of love and hope connect us all, no matter where we are. If this story touched your heart, like it touched mine, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. By subscribing, you're helping us spread more stories of kindness, hope, and the incredible power of human love to people everywhere. And speaking of amazing stories, I've got another mind-blowing tale waiting for you right now. Click on the video appearing on your screen. Trust me, you won't want to miss this next incredible journey. Until next time, remember, love really can move mountains, stop time, and create miracles. Keep believing in the impossible.